It's lesson 9 of our distance learning series, and it's time for us to argue from evidence about a related phenomenon. You'll need a pencil, today's journal slip, and your science journal. Speaking of your science journal, this would be a really good time to organize your journal or your digital files saved on your Chromebook. We don't know exactly how long we'll be learning virtually, so it's up to you to make sure that you're keeping a system that works. I might suggest that you label the corner of each journal slip with the designation DL for distance learning and the lesson number. Our first journal slip was Animals in Disguise. As you see on your screen, I've labeled the slip DL number 1. Now, if you're working hard copy, you can put this right in your journal on the right-hand side. But if you're working digitally on your Chromebook, I would make a folder called Science 7 Distance Learning, and as you work on your digital slips, rename the documents to say DL and the lesson number, and then house them in this folder. This way you know which files to upload for submission. I'm going to show you the rest of the slips that we've had thus far. If you want to take a moment to organize yourself, you can do so now. Now for today's related phenomenon. There was a species of bird that ate many types of seeds, and each type of seed came from a different species of tree. The bird's beak varied in size, some individuals having slightly smaller beaks like you see here, and others that had slightly larger beaks like you see here. Now, a few years went by without much rain at all, and the only species of tree that survived had large seeds. Many generations later, almost all the birds had the slightly larger beaks. Now, how is this best explained? In the next slide, I'm going to show you 4 students who constructed an explanation, and I want you to decide which student you agree with most and why. Here's what student A had to say. The birds with smaller beaks grew their beaks so they would better be able to eat the large seeds and get enough food to survive, reproduce, and pass the trait of larger beaks to the next generation. Student B said, the birds with smaller beaks had to work harder than those with larger beaks to crack open the large seeds. The more they used their beaks, the larger their beaks became. So they were able to get enough food to survive, reproduce, and pass the traits of large beaks to the next generation. Student C said, the birds with large beaks were better at eating the large seeds than those with smaller beaks, so only the birds with larger beaks got enough food to survive, reproduce, and pass the trait of large beaks to the next generation. And student D said, it was a chance occurrence that all the individual birds' beaks in the next generation were larger. They were therefore able to eat the large seeds and get enough food to survive, reproduce, and pass the trait of large beaks to the next generation. Which student do you agree with, and why? Take a moment to write your response on your journal slip. Make sure to give evidence and reasoning. Now, it's not enough to just know which one you agree with. We have to be able to pick out the flaws in other students' thinking. So look at the students once more. There's 3 of them that you obviously didn't agree with. What's wrong with each of their thinking? Take a moment to pause this screencast and explain the inaccuracies or the flaws in the other 3 students. Remember to give evidence and reasoning. You're now ready to submit evidence of today's learning. I want you to go to today's distance learning folder and post to our class discussion board. Then respond to at least one classmate. Which student do you agree or disagree with? Mrs. Anone and myself will be going on to the discussion board, so let's make this as interactive as possible. And don't forget about our productive talk moves. I want us to push each other to think at a high level like we would in the classroom. Let's ask each other questions. We want to press each other for evidence and reasoning. Until tomorrow, I need you to keep thinking and keep learning.